In real-world applications, your model and view needs a controller. And although we are not building out a real full-fledged controller, we're going to use our component or our client folder, our client JavaScript file as our controller. And there we're going to merge between our model and view. It's going to act as our business logic area, the controller. And through it, we're going to feed into our component the data and the views that it's going to be using. All right, let's take it a step even further. We really want everything to be dynamic, and we take a deeper look into our client and our app. One way we could do that is to merge between some of our content, which is the actual content itself, not the navigation, but not the footer either, the header, the content, the contact, the about, portfolio, really all of those children, all of these elements we would love to be able to impose from our client, basically creating another variation not only of our model but also of our view, making it easier for us to add and change and configure, creating with the same app structure different types of putting in, putting out different content. And I want to show you how we're going to do this. It's really exciting, and it's getting close to the end of our title, which really takes it to the next level. So I'm just going to make sure that I am importing it from the right directories. And once I have it imported from the right directories, I'm going to take it a step further. First of all, we have already our nav model, which we're going to go towards removing and turning it into something dynamic. We have our portfolio, we have our footer. We don't have a model for our contact. We don't have a model for our about. But for our header, if we take a look at our app, we do have a model, but we kind of baked it inside, which was our title and our subtitle. So I'm going to go and just grab those title and subtitle, go back into my client, and let's just create for that another let. And I'm going to let and call it our header model. And our header model will literally just have that title, and it's going to have that subtitle. And that's all of the header model will have. Beautiful. So now that we have all the things that we're planning to turn into their content to be dynamic, what I want to do next is, instead of creating a model, what I'm going to do, and I'll just leave it there so you guys could look at it, what I really want to create is a model view structure. And our MV is basically, which in many ways our React needs access to the model, and it has access to a view. The React itself is the view. So in this point in time, what I'm doing is I'm going to mix between the two. I'm not going to put our nav, but instead of that, I'm going to jump first to our portfolio, because that is going to be, well, actually, let's start from the order that we visually want to see it. So we want to have a header. And for our header, we don't have a model. We only have a view. What is the view? The view is the header. Okay, so let me just send that class as our view. I'm going to send in our header. Okay, we got ourselves our header. What is the next item in our, and by the way, we could do it as an array as well. I'm fine with it the way it is now, but we could have set it up as an array as well. So we have our header. The next item will be our portfolio. In the case of our portfolio, not only do we have our model, we also have our view. So let me just link our portfolio to our view, making it now very easy if I wanted to have different variations. Maybe have one view for client side generated, one view for another generated, and so on and so forth. So in my client itself, I'm defining the view of the portfolio. That makes sense because I want to make different views supposedly. After our portfolio, we have an about. Our about doesn't have a model, it only has a view, and the view is our about. Okay, so let's put that in there. And last but not least, for the items that are going to be dynamic, we also have our contact, and our contact view is contact. Beautiful. So we have our MV, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to send my model and view as our data instead of only our model. Now that I'm sending it in, let's go inside of our app and start figuring out the logic set that we would want to have inside of our render. Well, the first thing that we're really are gunning for is to really make this content more dynamic. So to do that, I'm just going to empty it out completely as we're working. And let me just save that commented out. And let's start figuring out our logic. So we know that we have a model and a view. So what I want to do is I want to loop through those items. So a for loop works perfectly, and I want to loop through those keys. So I'm going to use key in this .props.data because I need access to that key. Okay. Now what I want to do is, first of all, I want to find out if there is a class here. So I'm going to call this view because that's the view that we want. And I'm going to go to the this.props.data key and try to gain access to that view. Now I'm going to ask if there is a view. Okay, so I found a class reference here. What do we want to do in this case? Now there might not be, maybe they didn't give us a view or it wasn't valid. In our case, if there is a view, what do I want to do? I want to push, well, let's create a variable here, let children, which is going to be an array. And what I want to do is I want to go into our children and I want to push a new child, and that new child is going to be a view. Now, according to our structures that we had previously, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send in our data, and our data is going to be that model. So let's go ahead and fetch it, this.props.data key.model. Okay, so we have our model. What else do we need to do? So first of all, we need to set a key because it's a dynamically added child. Lucky for us, we have access to that key, as that is, we're looping through that key. So we're creating our children. Let's go ahead and test it out and see if we actually gain access, if everything is here working. So first of all, let's see if our children are coming through. So if I go ahead and give you a whirl, one is I'm getting a small error. Property, this.title is undefined, which is probably an indication of the fact that our title here is not being sent through, even though I thought it is. So let's double check. Model, that makes sense. In our client, we have here our header that has a view, but it doesn't have a model. So we needed to add that model, right? That header, where are you? So we need to add here also a model. Beautiful. So now that I'm sending in the model view, I need to also make sure that in that actual view of our header, we are actually gonna, and do I need these stuff? No, I don't need that. But one thing that I do need to make sure is that, because now I'm sending a data object and not that title directly. So let's go ahead and create here a new let and extract out the title and the subtitle. Out of what? Out of this.props.data. And now that I've subtracted those out, I could go ahead and just approach them directly here and directly here. So I don't have to, now they should be coming through instead of the data, or I would type in also that data. Okay, so once I've done that, let's go ahead and just test to see if it actually is rendering out. And if it does, we should see in our browser that it is rendering out. Beautiful. Okay, so we're getting really close. Now the next step, and really the big last step that's left for us to do, is to connect our menu and footer. In this lecture, we separated or really reintroduced the model with the view inside of our controller, inside of our client folder or our app folder. It really depends on the situation where your application is. In our case, that's what we did. In the next lecture, what we're going to do is we're going to make things even more dynamic, and as we introduce the ES6 Maps API.